our pipeline now has more people in it than we ever have really experienced at the level we're now working in. This is totally new territory for Y Street Capital. 12 different leads that are super qualified, exactly the type of customer we want to move to. That could say 12 million is the value of that specific pipeline. We were maybe working with 2 per year before this. One of them is on the door for a $2 million commitment that will represent the biggest win that we could have ever envisioned from the marketing and outreach work.
Robby, thanks for joining me today. Could you start off with who you are and what's your company? What do you guys do?
Sure. Y Street Capital is an institutional developer of real estate projects across Canada, United States. We look internationally for the occasional project as well. My specialty was in capital markets. I have a bit of a management function as well, but we realized we are weakest in our marketing and in our sales strategy. We've got such strong background, track record, operations, network, and yet we don't draw attention to ourselves even when we're doing projects over 1,000 acres or over 200 units. And so that was the pain point that we identified.
When we first connected, how do we connect and what drew you to working with me?
A good friend and partner in our business said, hey, you should at least talk to him while you're considering how to go about solving your marketing issues. I think we'd interviewed already maybe 20 different firms. And in those interviews, I constantly listened to people who had some grasp of it. And when John and I first met, you gave me such a good general grasp of the problem we were trying to solve without even having listened to much of our business issue that I said, holy cow, at least I know John understands these problems better than most and much better than the large marketing firms, the agencies that we could go and hire to do exactly what they know how to do. And you laid all of that out for me in maybe an hour-long phone call. And I thought to myself, we should definitely have another call with John to hear about his offering. Suddenly, I realized if we could hire smart, we should hire smart.
And if you can expand a little bit on the specific challenges and frustrations that you had before we worked together, what exactly were you having trouble with before we started our engagement?
One simple piece was that with 5 partners in Y Street, a whole bunch of staff members, $40 million in capital raise. We were trying to do everything at once. Social media, video, podcasts, going to conferences, speaking on stage, paid ads. We were spreading ourselves so thin and getting very low return on investment across all of them. And we were spending money freely to do so. We didn't know what we didn't know about how to prioritize. So I still have my notes from the first time you walked through the different categories to market to and the different sales channels to pursue. And that was such a moment of clarity to me to realize we need to learn where to say no, which is probably the first thing that we learned from our engagement with you was these are areas that you have proven success in your marketing and sales channel. And these are areas that you have no success in. We also had a bit of a customer product mismatch. So our product market fit was not perfect and we could optimize it if we just moved up a little bit in the client size. They say that's always the key in finance, but we hadn't perceived just how big of a difference it could make in our business. We didn't see that by moving up market a little bit more, by working with investors who had a little bit more capacity to invest, a little bit more experience, not only would we fit our brand tighter together with our offering, but it would produce more revenue for the company for doing so. So our leverage would increase just from working with the investors in our portfolio that were a little bit more optimized to what we do. And we were completely blind to that strategy until you got into our data with us in maybe the first month of our engagement and said, look, this is what I'm identifying. You're missing out on working with your best customers.
That's awesome. Yeah. So we worked on clarifying the persona and everything, aligning your content also a bit more towards that persona, and then also your other efforts. Can you tell me about anything else that you had tried prior to us working together to try to solve these issues that maybe did work to some extent or didn't work at all?
We were trying everything. We were pushing the envelope in our podcast, producing a ton of content there, trying to pivot it, but not gaining any traction, not getting the social media channels to really produce results, nothing to test, no grasp of what data was most essential to track. And so I felt like we were happy to go spend money, go buy a list, make some cold calls, go to a conference and buy a booth. All of these are traditional capital raising strategies, but we were so disorganized on it. That was our first solution you brought to us was, let's cut away 4 out of 6 and let's focus on 2. Let's focus on content. Let's focus on outreach specifically, because we were really strong in outreach when we did it. Prior to that, trying ads plus the many other channels that are out there to be able to go and reach investors was not producing results. So we said, okay, we'll delve into these 2. And that was where we really started to gain some traction.
Early on, we focused on mapping your market and deciding which acquisition channels that you mentioned we should lean into, right, to get the best results. Can you talk a little bit about how that helped shape your outreach and your focus?
We were always making phone calls. We were always pursuing the investors that would reach out to us. We knew the occasional content that would produce a lead would be followed up with, but we weren't systematic. We didn't realize how good we had it with the leads we did have, and we had no concept of the leverage that could be created for outreach. We were content to go pay $1,000 for 500 names that we could call. You taught us how we could create those lists ourselves with some basic tools that were infinitely more affordable to purchase. And in doing so, we were able to create our own leads. And that process gave us leverage that I don't think we would have gotten anywhere else. To be able to create your own leads, not just from the content piece, but by having databases that you have created yourself that you then can pursue outreach to because they're very focused to exactly who you want to be touching. We entered entirely new territory and found, oh my gosh, like the fields are white here. We should be farming here. And we had no concept beforehand.
Yeah, I think that was one of the really fun things about this engagement was how we went from a super high level kind of strategic focus and like really in the clouds thinking, okay, where should we be going? And then all the way down to the nitty gritty of, okay, now what are we doing? Which channel are we using? What exactly am I saying? So we covered segmenting lists and the kind of tactics around list building. I want to touch on that as well. Repurposing content and shifting to video. So initially the podcasts, you guys were just doing audio only, I believe, at the start. And can you talk to me about how we kind of switch formats and any impact that's had on engagement or reach or content repurposing, whatever benefits you got from that?
We had tried to put things out on YouTube before to paltry results at best, 5 views, that type of result. And you impressed upon us, if we're going to do content and if we're going to add video content, which again, a little bit different channel, but very similar, especially if we're using the exact same content we already have, we're just repurposing it for video. We have no reason not to do more of it. No reason not to share the message as widely as we can. I think our best YouTube viewership right now is nearing 1,000, and it took us literally no more effort. This is that leverage component coming up again, literally no more effort than what we were already doing, but we set up a little bit of a system to be able to take the content already recorded and repurpose it and go and cut out slices and share those on YouTube Shorts and have the same video go on all the other social media platforms. And that ability to gain leverage on exactly what we were already doing was another whole discovery. Yes, we could have paid some marketing agency to go and build all that out for us, but for the cost of the knowledge you gave us, we were able to set that up ourselves. So now it's prepared and now it's ready for the future. And as we create more and more video, the channels are already primed. We already have posts going out 5 times a week on 6 different channels from 5 different accounts. And that is the leverage that we gained over a piece of content we already had.
Yeah, you were already pretty actively making content on a regular basis. So that's often a big challenge, a big friction point for founders and partners is to like, hey, we actually have to start making content. You guys had already gone over that hump, and then it's more like, how do we reuse it? How do we make it pertinent? How do we bring it back?
Yep. You said this many times. It's well known. Like, people just need reminders. They don't need to discover you anew. They need to see you again at the timing that is right for them and then make that discovery when they're ready to make it. And we have such a better opportunity to do so now that the systems are in place.
Thank you for that. I want to shift over to results and wins. So can you share any specific results, whether it's leads, talking to the right people now, calls booked, pipeline growth, anything that you can speak to?
In terms of big wins, our pipeline now has more people in it than we ever have really experienced at the level we're now working in. So this is totally new territory for Y Street Capital. 12 different leads that are super qualified leads that are exactly the type of customer we want to move to. That for us is unheard of. We were maybe working with 2 per year before this, but we've got 12 leads in that pipeline from the marketing and outreach work. One of them is on the door for a $2 million commitment that will represent the biggest win that we could have ever envisioned from beginning this process. So very pleased with that.
That's great news. And I'm just curious, the 12 leads, so you got one that's like really late stage about to sign an LOI. The other 11 or 12, what's the estimated value you think of the whole pipeline?
Oh, I could say without even questioning the number, 12 million is the value of that specific pipeline. But if I were to look at the detail in specific, it would be higher than that, because at this stage with the groups that we decided to pivot to, writing a 7-figure check is a minimum level. We moved from 6-figure to 7-figure, and the pipeline of 7 figures, we've never seen this before. Our pipeline will never be empty again. We will never run out of people now that we know how to use the tools to create it. So that in itself, like, we could have had one engagement, you could have said that, and if I'd understood it on the first time, I would have been said.
Yeah.
But getting to implement it is a game changer. We now feel like a go-to-market company that can go and produce its own list to call forever. So that's a great thing. Like that in itself, like, again, worth the price of admission all day long. Another major win, this is a microcosm of something that has repeated itself, but once we had that tool in place, I remember the very first time making cold calls, a routine process for us. I picked up the phone, said, all right, this is actually pointing me to the chief executive officer of a 800-person company. Said, there is no way that this phone number produced from this list that we now have our ability to create our own database, there's no way this is correct, but might as well call. And first ring, he picks up, hello, this is John. I went, no kidding. That was a huge win. And that has repeated itself over and over. But every time it happens, I go, no kidding. Who would have thought?
Yeah, I know it's crazy. It's crazy the tooling that's out there now for go-to-market, right?
Yep.
And anything too on the cold calling side of things. I know I gave you a script and some objection handling, how to deal with gatekeepers. Did any of that come in handy as well when you were cold calling people?
It absolutely did. You always think that someone is super good at what they do, and you think, oh, I'm efficient at this, and yet you find the areas that you are weak when you are willing to push yourself and learn. I didn't realize how efficiently I could navigate some of the gatekeeper conversations, but there are ways to talk to people that gets them to give you the information you need. Yes, sometimes it does end up in a dead end no matter what, but over volume, you get to observe that, hey, these are producing results. And if you're making it through on 30% of the pickups, make it through the gatekeeper, you're that much more ahead. So talking about vocal strategy, talking about keeping it short and concise, takes on a more executive approach, which makes a gatekeeper feel like all I have to do is hand this person off and then everyone will be happy. That awareness, some of you gave us as well. So we have put it to good use.
Excellent. So is there one piece of advice that you give other founders that are trying to refine their acquisition channels, their growth strategy right now?
I would say everything that you can learn about the exact customer experience boils down to a few basic principles, which is what we learned from John in our first very free call with him. When John laid the landscape out for us, that's how I knew that we were working with a smart person. And so the more smart people you can bring in to look at your sales funnel, your process, the market, the go-to-market strategy you have, the better optimized it'll get. And we got that from John immediately. I still look at my notes from that first call all the time.
Thank you, Robby. Perfect segue. If someone's on the fence about working with me, what would you tell them?
Get on the phone, give you a phone call. I would say, what's the price of the customer that you bring in? What's the cost per lead generated? And what's the revenue from that one customer? And if someone can basically spoon feed you a customer immediately because of the insight that you get, it's worth exploring. And explore we did, and we will be back.
I appreciate that. Any final words or what's next for Y Street Capital?
We are doubling down on the things we learned, doubling down on the key priorities, and instilling it in the organization are our two big next steps. This is what we're pursuing, and this is where we generate the most value. This is how we gain leverage over our business. That's what we're doing next quarter, and we're really excited about it.
I love it. Exciting times. Thank you so much for your time today, Robby. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Talk to you soon.